You're watching a clip from the Football Ramble podcast. For the full episode, search Football Ramble wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes out Monday to Friday. Right, let's get on with it, shall we?
Well, Spurs, of course, are, one could say, in an embarrassing situation. Their managing director, Fabio Paratici, has had his 30-month ban from footballing affairs in Italy extended to football worldwide. Paratici was given a ban from Italian football in January after his former club Juventus were found guilty of false accounting. The news, of course, announced on Wednesday morning, just gone, straight after Paratici had fronted a club statement on Tuesday night giving an update on club affairs following Conte's departure. So, yes, Spurs then released the statement on Wednesday morning saying that we should like to make it clear that when Fabio conducted the interview on club channels yesterday, neither he nor the club had any indication of this decision being made by FIFA.
They didn't have any indication of the seismic events that were going on at Juventus, which were kind of flagged to the general public in November when the entire bloody board, including Andrea Agnelli, resigned in November.
We knew about this. Yeah. And they seem absolutely blindsided by it, which is fascinating.
I mean, the only thing you could say...
Are we a Premier League board? Is that what we're saying?
I think we could be.
We could be a Premier League football club board.
People that can read.
The club... The only thing, I think Jack Pickbrook was saying this in an article, the only thing that they could say is that he's appealed this ban, and so maybe they were all waiting on the appeal and so on. But it does seem a rather silly and embarrassing situation, Vish.
Yeah, just because of, in news times, the idea that statement is released, on the evening of Wednesday, I think, and then Thursday morning, basically, essentially side-by-side occurrences here in terms of that, if you look internally at that news cycle, that FIFA, announces ban is made. And the idea that they had no clue actually is a bit of a damning indictment on Spurs' hierarchy, because if you think of football teams across the world, there are people who are employed, covertly or otherwise. I don't mean covertly in like a sneaky sense, more that like, by the way, if you're talking to someone at FIFA, try and gauge information of what's going on here. They have those at all, whether it's UEFA or FIFA, they always have some kind of insider track. And evidently Spurs didn't, I don't know, either don't have it, they probably do have it, but they didn't tap into it.
They can't not know. This is just head in the sand direction at its worst.
But then how did that initial meeting over the job in the first place take place? Daniel Levy's sitting across from him thinking, this thing here about this investigation that's going on, that's nothing to worry about. No. If I'd look at the gap in the CV if I were you. I wouldn't focus on that at all.
Under strengths, you've put winning decisions of an appeal. The thing is, okay, that's good enough for us.
Under weaknesses, you put accounts.
Strengths appealing. Yeah, you are appealing. I agree, you are appealing. Let's say no more about it.
It's a mad old situation, especially the criticism Spurs have been facing or been getting recently with all the Antonio Conte business people now saying, should they have appointed him? And so I don't know, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but Levy himself has come in for a lot. And this happens. I mean, it's never a good time for this, of course, but this is a guy, Andy, who's been pretty much like, as we saw, he was the one who, as I say, we fronted up a club statement. It's like he's the face of the club right now, and this has happened. And as I say, it's never a good time for something like this. But you could say it couldn't have come at a worse time, because the boot has been stuck into Spurs a lot recently, and then this, and the fans must be going, "Oh bloody hell, what is going on?"
Yeah, I mean, Paratici has got a degree of power because he was able to bring Conte. That was a huge part of it. Without Paratici, they don't get Conte. So that gave him credit to work. Ability to work without really having Levy getting involved too much. But things have evolved so much since then, and not just because of the Juventus decision, but even if you're dragging your heels over it, even if you're hoping there's going to be an appeal, as you say, that they haven't talked about, or hoping it blows over, which is not gonna, or whatever, surely Conte going is the point where you say, okay, we need to appoint...
That's your chance.
We need to appoint... Yeah, exactly. We need to make a clean break. And also, we need to appoint a coach. I mean, for example, when we were talking about Spurs being interested in Julian Nagelsmann straight away, how do you get him in this situation? Like, you have no chance of getting him in this situation.
This might work in their favour, though, because when it comes to the summer, and Harry Kane's trying to leave, they'll just be saying to Charlie Kane, "There's no one to sell him, Charlie. We can't. We can't." He has to say, "We can't sell him."
It's a
Also, who are you kidding? How do we attract Nagelsmann to North London? Balenciaga pop up, easy.
What? Sorry,
Not a problem.
Say that again.
Just a bespoke fashion brand, tell them, come over here. We've got a pop up in North London.
Yeah.
The thing you mentioned about Paratici and his primary strength in that negotiation with Levy was attracting someone like Conte, or specifically bringing Conte in. Do you think he's standing by him now? Because obviously Levy will hope the appeal goes Paratici's way, but do you think Levy's also thinking, if we lose him, we also leave our crack at getting the right replacement for Conte?
But I think the whole problem is, I don't know if Spurs fans feel like this, but I think the whole problem is when you get Paratici to get Conte, you're attracting the wrong sort of manager. The last couple of managers, and we're going to forget Nuno for a second, when they brought in Mourinho and Conte, they're the wrong sorts of managers for Spurs. They're Levy servicing his ego. There is, rather than the coach we need, it's the coach we can get and the coach we couldn't get 5 years ago. Look at us in our blingy stadium and look at us with our superstar coaches. Never mind that they don't fit.
Do you think, without sounding churlish, or perhaps it is, that the situation at Spurs is exacerbated a bit by how well things are going at Arsenal this season?
No. I think it compounds it, definitely.
Okay.
And I think if you're a Spurs fan, you're probably thinking they've got their shit together and we don't, in a quite dramatic way.
Yeah, I think it's a separate bad thing, though.
Yeah. This is speaking to fundamental issues at the club that you can probably track, over the last decade, perhaps even longer, in terms of the way Levy has operated. Someone made a really interesting point on Twitter that I saw yesterday, and it wasn't necessarily directed at a specific instance with Levy and a manager, but it is interesting that Levy has shown more loyalty to Paratici than he has any manager that he's initially really, really gone for, really hitched his wagon to, and then coldly bin them off, essentially. At a time, and certainly in a situation where surely the only decision to be made here, as it was a week ago with Conte, is to cut ties to Paratici.
Okay, so you said, I get that, but you said about leaving the way he's kind of gone about his business in the last decade. Well, interesting article in the Times either today or yesterday that was saying that is it that bad at Tottenham? They're saying in the last decade Spurs have had an average finishing position of 4.5, if you will, in the Premier League. Considering how much money, Manchester City being the obvious team, Chelsea the other one, have splashed about, how good Liverpool have been in recent times and so on. Like, obviously, the situation with Paratici is bad, right? No getting away from that. That is ridiculous. In the wider context of Spurs, Andy, do you think it is that bad?
You know what? I think it's the process rather than the end result, and the process is important. I know that's a cliche, but I think a lot of this at the moment is Spurs fans watching dreadful football by coaches who think they're too good for the club, whilst paying the highest prices in the Premier League.
So post Pochettino,
I think that is a huge deal, and post this new stadium, which is a lovely stadium and a lovely experience, but it needs the football to fit it. I think that's a huge problem. In terms of where Spurs are historically, I think that's a separate point, because if you go back to like the first dozen years of the Premier League, where they never finish above 7th until you get Martin Jol in charge. Okay, that's different. They've moved on from there. But I think it is.
Do you think it's the fact they've moved on? You can't say, but 12 years ago, this is where we were. It's kind of like, but you're not there anymore.
Yeah, it's irrelevant. It's like me pointing to you and being like, you forget, don't you? You had 4 legs crawling out of the sea, not too long ago. It's like, totally irrelevant to the conversation now. It is. It is. Football's moved on so much. And even that stat about 4.5 is such a misnomer, given the difference between finishing 4th and finishing 5th right now.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. I think the challenge for Spurs was to get into this conversation, wasn't it? And to be in this upper echelon of the Premier League. Because I don't think that stat about them finishing no higher than 7th before Yo is irrelevant. Because traditionally they've been a team that win a cup about once every 10 years. They now want to be a team that gets into the Champions League and have managed that. Their aim is they want a title push, don't they? A real title push. That is really, really difficult. But the platform they're building for it, all right, it's shaky now. that's the point of all this, isn't it? It's the point of having a new stadium. It's I think, the fact they've got to the point where they have got that average Premier League position is a sign of progress. It's a slow sign.
I'm not saying them and Arsenal are the same, but they are in their post-blingy new stadium teething difficulty, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. But by the way, we should say, going back to the main issue around Tottenham at the moment, the big man still hasn't been sacked.
Yeah,
he's still there. So
well, if you're not going to sack him after that, you're not sacking him on Friday.
You called him Mr. Worldwide or the Worldwide Band. Would he soon be?
No, I said if it clearly wasn't Mr. Worldwide.
Yeah.
Mr. Local. I don't know.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Mr. Looking out his window.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching a clip from the Football Ramble podcast. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an upload. A single upload. Don't miss out on the uploads. The uploads are important.